Karen Matheson's fingers trembled with righteous indignation as she snapped the third photo of the woman sitting beneath the community oak tree. This was the evidence she needed. 3 days in a row, the same woman, same spot, same violation of age-old guidelines section 4.32, no loitering in common areas for extended periods. Gotcha, Karen whispered, zooming in on the woman's face. Dark skin, braided hair pulled back in a professional bun, absorbed in reading what appeared to be legal documents. Definitely not a resident Karen recognized from the 8 years she'd served on the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association board. Karen straightened her linen blazer and marched across the manicured lawn. As board secretary and head of the Community Standards Committee, it was her sacred duty to protect property values and community aesthetics. The HOA's rules existed for a reason. "Excuse me," Karen called out, her voice carrying the practiced authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "This area is for residents only. Are you visiting someone here?" The woman looked up slowly, marking her place in her document with a manicured finger. "Yes, I am." Karen's smile tightened. "And who might that be?" "I know all the residents in this section." "I'm here on business, actually." The woman's voice was calm, measured with a hint of an accent Karen couldn't place. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, there's a problem. You've been here for hours, 3 days in a row. That's loitering, which is expressly prohibited by our community guidelines." The woman's expression remained neutral as she carefully closed her folder. "I see. And you are?" "Karen Matheson, HOA Board Secretary." She didn't offer her hand. "I'll need to see some ID and proof of your business here." "I don't believe I'm required to provide that to you, Ms. Matheson." Heat rushed to Karen's face. "Then I'll have to ask you to leave immediately before I call community security." A small crowd had gathered now. Diane from 2 doors down, walking her Pomeranian, Robert, watering his meticulously groomed front lawn, and the new couple from the corner house, whose application for a garden trellis Karen had personally rejected last month. "My name is Dr. Amara Williams," the woman said, rising to her feet with deliberate grace. She was taller than Karen had realized. "I'm an attorney with the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Fair Housing Division. I've been reviewing complaints filed against this HOA for discriminatory enforcement practices." The color drained from Karen's face. "And you just provided an excellent demonstration of selective rule enforcement," Dr. Williams continued, gesturing to Robert, still watering his lawn. "Since according to Section 4.32, extended outdoor activities in common areas are prohibited, yet some residents seem exempt from this rule." Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. "I'll be adding this interaction to my report," Dr. Williams said, tucking her documents into a sleek leather portfolio. "You can expect formal correspondence from our office next week." She nodded politely to the gathered neighbors. "Enjoy your afternoon, everyone." As Dr. Williams walked away, Karen stood frozen, suddenly aware of the neighbors' eyes on her and the distinct feeling that her comfortable world had just begun to crumble. Karen's emergency text to the HOA board members produced a hastily arranged meeting in Thomas Wilson's living room that same evening. Thomas, the board president, paced before the fireplace while Karen recounted her confrontation with Dr. Williams. "She's deliberately targeting us," Karen insisted, her voice strained. "I was simply enforcing the rules that we all agreed upon." Board Treasurer Jeff Mitchell sighed heavily. "Karen, this is exactly what I warned about last meeting. Your enforcement has been inconsistent at best." "Inconsistent?" Karen's voice rose. "I've been protecting our community standards for years. My efforts are why our property values have increased 12% more than neighboring developments." Thomas raised his hand to interrupt. Dr. Williams mentioned complaints, plural. Does anyone know what other incidents she might be investigating? An uncomfortable silence filled the room. Maureen Davis, the newest board member, cleared her throat. "There was the Singh family's Diwali decorations you had removed last fall while allowing Christmas lights to stay up until February, and the Gonzalez family's renovation request that took 6 months to approve, while the Andersons' identical project was approved in 2 weeks." Karen's face flushed. "Those were completely different circumstances." "Were they?" Maureen challenged quietly. Thomas's phone buzzed. He looked down, face paling. "It's an email from Williams. Subject line: Notice of federal investigation into discriminatory practices." There's a PDF attached. Karen reached for her water glass with trembling fingers. "This is ridiculous. We're volunteers maintaining community standards, not." "This says they've received 11 formal complaints in the past 2 years," Thomas interrupted, skimming the document. "Citing a pattern of discriminatory enforcement against homeowners of color." He scrolled further, eyes widening. "They've compiled a spreadsheet comparing response times and approval rates. The disparity is significant." "Let me see that," Karen demanded, reaching for Thomas's phone. The doorbell rang. Thomas excused himself and returned moments later with his next-door neighbor, Gabriela Hernandez. "Sorry to interrupt," Gabriela said, "but I thought you should see this." She held up her phone, showing a neighborhood social media page where video of Karen's confrontation with Dr. Williams was already circulating. The comments section was a tsunami of outrage. "The video doesn't show the whole story," Karen protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Gabriela's expression hardened. "I've lived here 3 years, Karen. You cited me for wind chimes being noise pollution while ignoring the Petersons' outdoor speakers blasting music every weekend. You rejected my request for a small herb garden but approved Caroline Miller's koi pond that required extensive excavation. Those were different. Because I'm Latina?" Gabriela challenged. "Dr. Williams interviewed several of us last week. We've been documenting everything." Karen looked desperately toward her fellow board members, finding only averted eyes and uncomfortable expressions. The protective bubble of authority she'd existed in for years was disintegrating before her eyes. Thomas stood, his decision apparent. "Karen, I think it would be best if you stepped down from the board, effective immediately. We need to demonstrate we're taking this seriously." "You can't be serious," Karen whispered. "After everything I've done for this community?" But looking at the faces around her, Karen realized that perhaps what she'd done for the community wasn't what she had always believed. Karen slammed her front door behind her, dropping her purse on the entryway table with such force that the framed HOA Community Excellence Award toppled over. She didn't bother to write it. "They'll regret this," she muttered, pouring herself a generous glass of Chardonnay. "I've given 8 years to this community. 8 years of thankless volunteer work." Her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. The neighborhood watch group chat was on fire, and her personal email was filling with messages from residents. Karen silenced her phone without reading any of them. She opened her laptop and navigated to the HOA's shared drive, intending to download evidence of her fair treatment of all residents. Her login attempt was rejected. Already locked out, the betrayal stung more than she'd expected. A soft knock at her door startled her. Through the peephole, she saw Ellen Peterson, her closest ally on the board, and she'd thought her friend. "What do you want?" Karen demanded, cracking the door but leaving the security chain engaged. Ellen's face was strained. "I came to check on you. Things got intense back there." "Oh, now you care? Where was your support when Thomas ambushed me?" "Karen, this isn't an ambush. The HUD investigation is real and the evidence doesn't look good. We need to take it seriously." "Evidence? What about all the times I've waived violation notices for hardship cases? What about the Jenkins family when I gave them extra time on their roof repair after his accident?" "The Jenkins family is white, Karen," Ellen said quietly. "Look at your enforcement record objectively. White residents received warnings, extended deadlines, and exceptions. Everyone else got immediate violations and fines." "That's not," Karen began but stopped. Had she really been that biased? It wasn't intentional if she had. She was just enforcing the rules, wasn't she? Ellen sighed. "There's more. After you left, we reviewed the complaint log. Remember the basketball hoop the Williams family wanted to install last summer? You cited neighborhood character concerns in your rejection. The next month, you approved the Thompsons' identical request. The Thompsons' hoop was mounted further from the street," Karen protested weakly. "It wasn't, Karen. We measured both locations from the plans. They were virtually identical." Karen's certainty wavered. She'd been so convinced of her objectivity, so secure in her role as protector of community standards. "The board is calling an emergency community meeting tomorrow night," Ellen continued. "Dr. Williams will be there with the HUD team. We're announcing a complete overhaul of our approval and enforcement processes. Without consulting me, I built those processes." "That's the problem," Ellen said gently. "Look, I came because despite everything, I consider you a friend. This can go one of two ways. You can fight this, maintain you did nothing wrong, and potentially face personal liability in the federal investigation. Or what?" Karen asked, voice barely audible. "Or you can listen. Really listen to what residents of color have experienced under your enforcement. You can acknowledge the harm, however unintentional, and be part of rebuilding a more equitable system." Karen's throat tightened. The thought of facing her neighbors, of admitting she'd been wrong, was almost unbearable. But the alternative, becoming the neighborhood pariah, possibly facing legal consequences, seemed worse. "I'll think about it," she said finally, closing the door before Ellen could see the tears welling in her eyes. Sleep eluded Karen that night. She tossed and turned, replaying years of HOA interactions in her mind. Had she really treated people differently based on race? She always prided herself on being colorblind, enforcing rules equally for everyone. At 3 a.m., she gave up on sleep and opened her personal files. Karen was nothing if not meticulous. Every violation notice, every approval, every rejection, all documented with dates and justifications. She began sorting them by outcome, then by homeowner, cross-referencing with the community directory that included the family photos from the annual picnic. As dawn broke, Karen sat back, stomach churning. The pattern was undeniable. White homeowners received approvals 87% of the time. Everyone else, 34%. White residents received warning notices before violations. Others received immediate fines. The data didn't lie. "But I'm not racist," she whispered to her empty kitchen. The defense sounded hollow even to her own ears. A notification popped up on her phone. The community meeting was scheduled for 7 p.m. Already 43 residents had confirmed attendance. Unprecedented for an HOA gathering where they usually struggle to meet quorum. Karen's doorbell rang at noon. Through the peephole, she saw Dr. Williams standing on her porch, professional portfolio in hand. Karen hesitated, then opened the door. "Dr. Williams, I assume you're here to serve me with formal papers." "Actually, Ms. Matheson, I'm here to talk. May I come in?" Surprised, Karen stepped aside. They sat across from each other at her dining table, the same table where Karen had drafted countless violation notices. "I reviewed your enforcement records last night," Karen admitted. "I see the pattern now, though I never intended." "Intent and impact are different things," Dr. Williams interjected. "The impact of biased enforcement is the same, regardless of conscious intent." Karen nodded slowly. "The meeting tonight, what will happen?" "That depends partly on you." Dr. Williams leaned forward. "HUD doesn't aim to punish communities. We want to see equitable housing practices. Transformation is always preferable to penalties." "What would transformation look like here?" "New approval processes with objective criteria, regular bias training for board members, and monetary restitution to those who faced discriminatory fines or were denied reasonable accommodations." Karen winced at the financial implications. "The board won't have the reserves for significant restitution." "Which is why I'm here," Dr. Williams said. "You're no longer on the board, but you are the primary decision-maker in these cases. Your participation in making things right would make a difference." Karen's first instinct was defensive outrage. It's sitting across from this composed, professional woman, the same woman she tried to intimidate just yesterday. Karen felt something shift inside her. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Come to the meeting tonight. Listen to your neighbors, really listen to their experiences. Acknowledge the harm done. And then help design a more equitable system going forward." "They all hate me now," Karen whispered. "People are angry, yes, but communities can heal when there's genuine accountability." Dr. Williams stood to leave. "The choice is yours, Ms. Matheson. I'll see you tonight, or I won't." After Dr. Williams left, Karen sat motionless, facing the hardest decision of her life: retreat into defensiveness or step forward into uncomfortable truth. The community center buzzed with tension as Karen slipped through the back door. She chose a seat in the last row, hoping to remain inconspicuous, but heads turned immediately. Whispers cascaded through the room. Karen kept her eyes fixed on her lap, feeling the weight of dozens of stares. Thomas Wilson called the meeting to order, his voice strained as he introduced Dr. Williams and her HUD colleagues. Karen barely heard the opening statements, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then the testimonials began. Maria Suarez described waiting 7 months for approval to install a wheelchair ramp for her mother, receiving multiple rejections for aesthetic concerns before finally getting approval after hiring a lawyer. James Washington detailed how his children were reprimanded for playing basketball in their own driveway after 6 p.m., while the white family across the street hosted loud teenage gatherings without consequence. Priya Patel explained how her Diwali decorations were deemed excessive and non-seasonal when Christmas lights covered houses for months. Story after story, pattern after pattern. Some residents spoke through tears, others with carefully controlled anger. Karen recognized every case. She'd been the one issuing those violations, denying those requests. "These aren't isolated incidents," Dr. Williams concluded. "They represent systemic bias in how rules were created and enforced." Thomas outlined the preliminary agreement with HUD, a complete overhaul of HOA guidelines, bias training for current and future board members, and a restitution fund for affected homeowners. "Where's the money coming from?" someone called out. "Our dues shouldn't increase because of someone else's discrimination." A tense silence fell. Karen's moment had arrived before she was ready. Her legs trembled as she stood. "The restitution fund won't come from increased dues," she said, her voice initially quavering but steadying as she continued. "I've arranged to cover it personally." The room erupted in murmurs. Karen moved to the front, feeling every step like walking through quicksand. "I served on this board for 8 years, she began. "I believe I was maintaining standards and protecting property values. I didn't want to see, that I was applying those standards unequally." She took a deep breath. "Last night, I reviewed every decision I've made. The bias is clear and undeniable. I can't undo the stress I caused, the improvements delayed, the enjoyment of your homes diminished, but I can acknowledge the harm and take concrete steps to make amends. Karen detailed her agreement with HUD, funding the $50,000 restitution pool, resigning from the board permanently, and committing to bias training that she would pay for personally. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she concluded. I'm committing to accountability. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Gabriela Hernandez stood up. This doesn't erase what happened, she said firmly, but it's a start. I'll be watching to make sure these changes actually happen. Others nodded in agreement. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the first fragile step toward healing. As the meeting continued with discussions of revised guidelines, Karen felt something unexpected. Not the relief of absolution, but the quiet dignity of facing consequences honestly. It wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. And somewhere in that necessity, she found a glimmer of possibility that her community might eventually become what it should have been all along. 3 weeks after the community meeting, Karen sat alone at her kitchen table, calculating numbers that made her stomach clench. The restitution fund had depleted her savings significantly. She would need to put her house on the market soon. Downsizing was her only option now. The doorbell rang. Karen wasn't expecting anyone. Since the meeting, her social circle had evaporated. Former friends crossed the street to avoid her. She'd stopped attending her book club after sitting through 30 minutes of frigid silence. She opened the door to find Amara Williams. Dr. Williams, Karen said, surprised, I've signed all the paperwork. Is there something else needed for the settlement? This isn't an official visit, Amara replied. May I come in? In the living room, Amara declined coffee but accepted water. I'm here because the review committee is meeting tomorrow to evaluate applications for the new HOA board positions. Your name appeared in my email this morning. Karen stared blankly. That's impossible. I didn't apply. Someone nominated you for the compliance oversight position. It's new, designed to ensure equitable enforcement of community guidelines. Who would possibly? Gabriela Hernandez. Karen fell silent, stunned. Her comment was interesting, Amara continued. She wrote, no one understands our broken system better than the person who administered it, and no one has more motivation to fix it than someone who's faced consequences for their role in it. Karen's hands trembled around her water glass. That's absurd. The community would never accept me. Actually, her nomination has received 12 supporting signatures, including Maria Suarez and James Washington. The very people I discriminated against, Karen whispered. Amara nodded. People can surprise you. I'm not saying everyone's on board, but there's significant support. I don't understand why. Your accountability was genuine, Karen. Not everyone gets a second chance, but when they're offered, there's usually a reason. Amara placed a folder on the coffee table. This is the position description. The committee meets tomorrow at 3. Think about it. After Amara left, Karen opened the folder with trembling hands. The role would require implementing the new approval matrix, ensuring consistent application of rules and quarterly reporting to the HUD oversight team. At the bottom was a personal note from Gabriela. Being wrong isn't the worst thing. Refusing to learn from it is. Karen's phone buzzed with a text from Ellen. Heard about the nomination. You'd be good at this if you're ready to do the work. Karen walked to her window, watching neighbors returning from work, children playing on the community lawn. For 8 years, she'd appointed herself guardian of this community, seeing threats to property values and neighborhood character in every deviation from her narrow vision of propriety. Now, for the first time, she saw simply neighbors. People living their lives, raising families, creating homes. The diversity she had unconsciously policed now struck her as the community's strength, not its weakness. The position wouldn't erase her mistakes. Some neighbors would never forgive her, and she would have to accept that. But perhaps this was how authentic restoration began, not with forgetting the harm done, but with committing to a new path forward. Karen picked up her phone and texted Ellen back. I'll be there tomorrow. Not sure they'll choose me, but I'm ready to try. The new board convened on a Thursday evening 2 months later. Karen arrived early, arranging her binder of revised compliance procedures on the conference table. Her stomach fluttered with nervous energy. Despite her nomination being approved, she knew tonight's open meeting would be her first real test. Ready for this? Thomas asked, setting up the projector. He'd remain as board president, the only continuing member after the reshuffling. As ready as I'll ever be, Karen replied. The meeting room gradually filled. Karen noted the diversity. Residents who had never attended HOA meetings before were now present, claiming their right to participate in community governance. She recognized faces from the testimonial night, including Maria Suarez and her mother in her wheelchair, positioned near the front. Gabriela took her place as the new vice president, giving Karen a small nod. Their working relationship remained professional, not friendly, but the hostility had evolved into cautious cooperation. The meeting progressed through standard updates until they reached Karen's presentation on the new compliance system. She stood, feeling the weight of appraising gazes. "Good evening," she began. "As your new compliance oversight officer, I'm here to present the equitable enforcement framework we've developed in consultation with residents and HUD representatives." Karen walked the community through the changes: objective criteria for approvals, a standardized timeline for responses, a transparent appeals process, and quarterly audits of enforcement patterns to catch unconscious bias before it became systemic. Most importantly, she continued, we've established the Reasonable Accommodation Committee, comprised of residents with diverse backgrounds and needs, to ensure our standards account for cultural, religious, and accessibility considerations. As Karen outlined specific examples, she noticed Maria Suarez watching intently. When Karen explained the new streamlined process for accessibility modifications, Maria's expression remained guarded but attentive. The hue in a session began with residents approaching the microphone. The questions came rapid fire, some pointed, others genuinely curious. Karen answered each one directly, neither defensive nor overly apologetic, simply focused on the concrete improvements. Then Maria wheeled her mother to the microphone. "My mother needs additional handrails installed," Maria said. "Under the old system, I waited 7 months for approval. How would this work now?" Karen stepped from behind the table, bringing the relevant form to Maria. "Accessibility modifications now have a separate, expedited process. The committee must respond within 7 business days, and safety accommodations of handrails have pre-approved design options." She pointed to the illustrated examples. "If you submit this tomorrow, you have approval by next Friday." Maria's mother spoke quietly in Spanish. Maria translated. "She asks if you are the one who will decide." "No," Karen answered, looking directly at the elderly woman. "I process the paperwork, but the committee makes decisions collaboratively. My role is to ensure the process works as designed, not to control the outcomes." Maria and her mother exchanged looks. "We'll submit the application tomorrow," Maria said finally. As the meeting concluded, Karen noticed Dr. Williams observing from the back row. Their eyes met briefly. No words were exchanged, but Amara's slight nod acknowledged what they both recognized: the system was changing, slowly but meaningfully. And in her new role, Karen was no longer the obstacle but part of the solution.